Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to those of you in the chat joining me on this sunny afternoon here in the UK. Serious concerns have been raised about Scientology's private school in Sussex by the name of Greenfields. Last year, I did a video looking at the latest inspection report and covered the concerns that were raised by the Independent Schools Inspectorate. The school has since been inspected again, and in this video, we are going to look at the latest report based on an inspection that took place in March earlier this year, so just a couple of months ago. Before we dive in, I want to say hello to everybody in the chat. Hello, Melanie from West Virginia. Hey, Jensen. Mark is here. Karen, EdgyCon, Champagne Hand. How's it going? Thank you, everybody, for joining. And Mark the Dorset SP is here, of course. And everybody else. Anna Reese, Tumble Dry Low, Golden Astro Cat, D. Williams. Hi, welcome. Let's dive straight in. So a little bit of context. Greenfields is a school in sunny Sussex, or sunny on a day like this anyway. It is a private school, so it doesn't fall under the remit of Ofsted, which is what the government body that looks after public schools, as in public in the American term. State-funded schools. It's a lovely building. It's in the countryside. It actually falls into East Sussex rather than West Sussex. It's in Forest Row. It's actually not that far from East Grinstead and from St. Hill. And they actively promote the fact that they use Scientology techniques. You can see the Way to Happiness logo on their website, Applied Scholastics, which is the Scientology front group that deals with study tech. That was the principles that L. Ron Hubbard came up with about how to study. And obviously the Independent Schools Association, Cambridge Assessment, and the ISI. So they don't shy away from the fact that they use L. Ron Hubbard techniques to study, but they do claim that they are not a religious school and they welcome children of all faiths, which I agree would probably be true to some extent. But they certainly use Scientology techniques, and they certainly have an expectation that most students will go on to work for the church after they graduate. I had a very near miss with Greenfields. When I finished school at the age of 16, I wanted to carry on I wanted to stay on staff. But if I couldn't stay on staff, I wanted to go to sixth form to do my A-levels. And I was in talks with Greenfields to see if I could do my A-levels there. So at least I was still in the Scientology sphere. Luckily, that didn't happen. Greenfields is a very expensive school and not something that I could have afforded or my family could have afforded at that time. So near miss, luckily. But I nonetheless keep a close eye on the school and the inspection reports that are coming out as time progresses. Most of the staff at London Org that I worked with went to Greenfield School. Although students, Scientology kids are allowed to go to any school they want to, a lot of them are obviously in and around East Grinstead. And if they can go to Greenfields, the parents will send them there because it's the only school in the country that uses study technology and Scientology ethics and the like. So let's just delve into this report here. This is the Independent Schools Inspectorate, which is the government body responsible for inspecting schools, private schools in the UK. It's going to be a fairly lengthy video because we're just going to go through this report. It is 22 pages long. We're not going to read it all word for word, as you can see my yellow highlights here that we're going to delve into. But essentially, the too long didn't read, I suppose, is this school is subpar, and the ISI have raised very serious concerns about safeguarding at this school. And we're going to read more about that. So let's crack on. This is the contents of the document. It goes through all the different areas that's inspected, and this is the summary. Greenfields is a school that does nursery up through to sixth form, which means from the ages of 3 or 4 right up to the age of 18. This is a summary. Governors have not ensured that the standards are met consistently. New leaders have only recently taken up their roles. They have an accurate awareness of the school's strengths and areas of development. However, they have a systematic approach towards strategic risk assessment. However, assessments of risk to individual pupils and from wider activities are not coherently documented. I'm going to whiz through this bit because we're just going to delve into it. But these 15 points here are basically the concerns that were raised. So let's look at the first thing, the extent to which the school meets the standards. Standards relating to leadership and management and governance are not met. Standards relating to the quality of education, training, and recreation are not met. Standards relating to pupils' physical and mental health and emotional well-being are met, as are the standards relating to pupils' social and economic education and contribution to society. However, standards relating to safeguarding are not met. There are a number of areas of action that are laid out, and these are the next steps that the ISI have recommended or require Greenfields to go through. Leaders, as in the board of governors, the teachers, everybody working at the school, need to introduce a uniform assessment of pupils' ability on entry to the secondary school so that their progress can be reliably measured. So let's not forget, these are recommended steps, meaning these are things that are not currently being done at Greenfields. Give further training to classroom teachers so they are able to adapt their planning effectively to meet the needs of all pupils, including pupils with SEND, which is special educational needs. Expand the range and choice of activities available to secondary school pupils outside lesson time to develop their emotional, intellectual, social, creative, and physical skills. Centralize records of behavioral incidents so that leaders can more effectively analyze any trends and take action for improvement. Enable leaders to more easily check implementation and improvements needed by centralizing records of health and safety, assessment of risk, and fire documentation. Improve the standards of maintenance in the boarding accommodation, because Greenfield is a boarding school. They have day pupils and pupils who stay there 5 or 7 days a week. Arrange for boarding leaders to undertake formal training to support them to fulfill their role. Formalize procedures through which boarders can both express and receive feedback on their views about boarding life. Introduce a system to coordinate staff's concerns about pupils so that leaders can more effectively identify any risks to pupils' well-being. So the first area they look at is leadership and management and governance. Governors have arrangements to oversee the work of school leaders, but these are not always effective. Standards are not met consistently. They have not always checked that advice has been followed, particularly in the handling of safeguarding incidents. So what they're saying here is that there is a procedure in place regarding reporting safeguarding concerns, but those procedures aren't always followed. Records are kept all over the place. There's no central place for these records to be kept, so that it's kind of all over the place and not very well managed, is what they're effectively saying here. The welfare of individual boarders, i.e. the children who are living on the premises, is a priority for leaders. However, leaders have little experience or training in this area, which is reflected in the consistent implementation of the standards. So Greenfields is being run by people who don't know what they're doing. That's what I'm taking from this. Leaders have not considered the educational well-being of secondary school pupils because teachers do not have reliable knowledge of pupils' starting points and aptitudes. Hence, in some lessons, pupils do not make the progress of which they are capable. The implementation of safeguarding and boarding policies is ineffective. Leaders have yet to introduce systems to support the coordination of records, for example, in safeguarding, health and safety, fire, risk, and behavior. This increases the risk of trends or low-level issues not being identified at an early enough stage to rectify quickly. Now, I'd like to remind everybody that Greenfields prides itself as a place that is run as per how L. Ron Hubbard says to run a school. It uses the Scientology organizing board, it uses the ethics system, and it applies study technology. Greenfields is supposed to be a beacon, a shining light, an example of how L. Ron Hubbard policy and procedure works. And yet here, the ISI are saying it's not working. And actually, there are concerns about the welfare of children at the school. I'd also like to remind you that this school is run by Scientologists. the board of governors, the head governor, the guy most like in charge and overseeing the school itself and making sure that the board of governors are held accountable, is Peter Hodkin, who is Scientology's lawyer. Sounds like these folks should lose whatever certification they have that allows them to be a school. Well, there we go. You wait till we finish this document. It gets worse. Parents have access to the school's complaints policy should they need it. However, boarders have no formal way of raising their own concerns. So what they're saying here is that if parents write in and say, I'm worried about this or I'm concerned about this, there's a policy and procedure in place. However, if a student living at the school is concerned about something, there's no formal way for them to flag their concerns or raise a complaint or raise any sort of feedback at all. That doesn't exist. They cannot raise their own concerns. The school is only listening to the parents, who obviously aren't there if they're boarding students. New leaders are establishing good links with external safeguarding agencies. I've highlighted this because, yes, this is a good point. Right, this means that the school are building relationships and meeting people in the safeguarding sector, the local council, that sort of thing. However, this is clarification of the the safe pointing policy. Scientology employs a policy called safe pointing, where they aim to build relationships with local officials so that they look the other way, turn a blind eye when things don't go so well. Now, Greenfields here is applying safe pointing by building relationships with the safeguarding agencies, and I imagine that's in response to this report. The extent to which the school meets standards, leadership, management, governance, we're still in the same section here. Standards are not met consistently with respect to the safeguarding of pupils and boarders and the provision of recreational activities for boarders. As a result, the standards relating to governance, leadership, and management are not met. Moving on to the quality of education, training, and recreation. Teachers refer pupils who have difficulty with academic work to the qualifications department. Now, qualifications department is a department on the Scientology organizing board. The org board essentially is a way to run an organization. Every Scientology organization in the world has one, and there are different divisions that are responsible for different areas of the business or the organization. So Qual, which is the qualifications department, is the one they're talking about here. Teachers have little awareness of strategies they might use in the classroom to support these pupils. So essentially, the teachers are saying, oh, I don't know, that's not my job. That is someone else's hat, is what they call it in Scientology, because that concern is something that Qual should be dealing with and not the teachers. So the teachers aren't informed on the policies and procedures they should be aware of when it comes to students having difficulty with their work. Although pupils with SEND, which is special educational needs, and pupils who speak EAL, which is English as an additional language, feel well supported by the arrangements, teachers do not take account of the needs of these pupils in the planning of their lessons. As a result, pupils who have SEND and who speak EAL develop their skills more quickly outside rather than inside lessons. So that means the teachers are planning their lessons and they don't pay any care or attention to those who might have ADHD or autism or educational challenges, mental health difficulties, that sort of thing, or those who don't speak English as a first language. Those two types of student don't come in to the mindset of a teacher when planning their lessons at Greenfields. I think that says a lot, does it not? A lack of uniformity in assessing pupils' starting points when they join the secondary school means that teachers have no reliable or consistent standard against which to evaluate pupils' achievement. Marking of work is largely by the pupils themselves. So in British schools, you have different assessment periods as you progress, as you get older. And usually when you reach the end of year 6, which is the end of the primary school area, you then take an assessment, which then puts you on a chart against the other pupils as to how well you're doing academically, what your potential is. And that then informs which groups you're put in the secondary school and what different areas you might be more likely to excel in and areas you might need a little bit more help in. That assessment happens in state-funded schools every year. All the year 6 pupils do it, and you do it again at your GCSEs at the end of school when you're 16. What this is saying here is pupils don't have that assessment when they move from the primary school part to the secondary school at Greenfields, which means there's no assessment of where students are at on their educational journey when they're halfway through, which means it's difficult for teachers, therefore, to help them adequately. That's what the ISI are saying here. When teachers do not plan for pupils' individual needs, some find the set tasks too easy and become disengaged. As a consequence, their progress stalls. The school provides some co-curricular activities for the very few pupils above compulsory school leaving age. However, for boarders, there is almost no weekly activity and little arranged at the weekends. What this means is the pupils who are staying on site that are boarding are very bored. They don't have activities to do on the weekends outside of school time. Now, this isn't covered in the ISI report, but my suspicion is that's because the expectation is that students go to St. Hill to study Scientology outside of their school hours. That's just a suspicion based on my understanding of how Scientology in Greenfields works. There's no evidence to prove it, but I would imagine they're not putting on a bunch of activities over the weekend because they expect students to go study at St. Hill. And also, the parents and the teachers and the staff are likely also studying at St. Hill on their time off. So it's likely that they have not got the time or the capacity to put on stuff for the kids to do. The extent to which a school meets standards relating to the quality of education, training and recreation. Standards are not met consistently with respect to the provision of recreational activities for the boarders. As a result, standards relating to the quality of education, training and recreation are not met. When we look at physical and mental health and emotional well-being, the ISI say they are critical of the lack of organized activity. This is talking about the pupils here. The pupils are critical of the lack of organized activity available to them. Boarders do not have enough recreational opportunities available to them. The curriculum offers some, but not extensive opportunities for physical education. Health and safety documentation, including that applicable to fire safety, is all up to date, but not coordinated in one place, which means routine checking of implementation difficult. Levels of maintenance meet the minimum standards, but need improvement. Now, this is talking about the accommodation that the pupils live in. If you are a boarding school pupil, you live in the main building where the school is located, and you can board either 5 days a week or 7 days a week. And the ISI here is saying that they meet the minimum standards, but it needs work. For example, there is some broken furniture and door catches. During the inspection, the governors requested leaders to produce a detailed plan to address these issues. So the ISI here is saying not only was it a concern, but it was an urgent concern that needed addressing, because during their inspection, they said, you need to address this, and required them to develop a plan and present the plan before they'd even finished the inspection. That's how concerned the ISI are about Greenfields. There is no formal procedure for boarders to express and receive a response to their views about boarding. So this, again, is another indicator Greenfields are not listening to their students, they're listening to the parents. There's no formal procedure for students to raise concerns or worries or anything about the situation they're living in, their accommodation. They only have the opportunity to express that through parents. However, the standards are met. So in this area, the standards are met, but that doesn't mean they don't require improvement. Let's look at pupils' social and economic education and contribution to society. A few pupils undertake some work experience. So, what they're saying here is there is a lot of opportunity to develop your skills and become a valuable contribution to society. There's lots of arts programs, drama, theatre, music, that sort of thing. I'll give them credit as well. They also have modules on handling bank accounts, savings, and mortgages, which is not something you often get in British schools. One of my main criticisms of my school time was I learned a lot about the world. I learned a lot in my education, but I never really had an opportunity to learn about things that actually will benefit you in life, like how to apply for a mortgage, or how to manage your finances, and how to write a CV, a resume. All that sort of stuff wasn't really covered during my school experience, and a lot of people that I speak to say the same. So give them credit. Greenfield School do have, it appears, a good system in place to teach their kids about this sort of life skills stuff. However, my hunch here is that they are being taught about finances because finance is very important when you're a Scientologist, because Scientology care more about money than they do about anything else. So, the standards regarding social and economic education and contribution to society are met. However, let's look at safeguarding. Now, this is where the majority of the concerns are risen by the ISI. Leaders have drawn up policies that meet statutory guidance. However, the implementation does not consistently promote the welfare of pupils. So, to my understanding, that indicates to me that they've done what they need to as a tick box exercise to have all the forms and stuff there, but they don't actually implement what they're supposed to ensure the safeguarding of children. Referrals by pupils are not always recorded contemporaneously. Further, consequent decisions made by safeguarding leaders and governors are not always recorded, nor is possible risk to pupils arising from decisions always assessed. There is no mechanism for sharing observations about a pupil's behavior that might contribute to a more detailed picture of a pupil's well-being. Pupils are comfortable talking to a number of adults. However, staff do not formally document and share the information they receive. Governors have reviewed the safeguarding policy so that it is in line with the latest statutory guidance. This includes strengthening the protocols for monitoring and filtering of electronic devices in school. So what they're saying here is the phones and technological devices that these kids have at school are monitored. Scientology are watching what these guys are doing on their phones and on their devices in their private time. They're saying it's safeguarding to make sure they're not looking at anything they shouldn't. But we all know part of that censorship is ensuring they don't read anything negative about Scientology. Boarders cannot identify any formal way in which they can raise or receive responses to their concerns. Suitable internet filtering and monitoring procedures are in place. So again, this is seen as a benefit because it's ensuring the safety of children online. But the question I therefore have is, to what extent is that monitoring actually enforcing Scientology's censorship? The extent to which the school meets standards relating to safeguarding, standards are not met consistently with respect to the safeguarding of pupils and boarders. As a result, the standards relating to safeguarding are not met. This then highlights all of the areas in which the standards are not met. So that was basically the summary of why they believe that the standards haven't been met. And what this next page is it shows you the excerpt of all of the standards the school have to meet, and they've taken out the excerpt of every single standard that the school Greenfields is not meeting. Now, a good school might have one or two things, right? The list of areas in the standards that Scientology School Greenfields does not meet is 2 pages long. I'm not going to read through it all, but just to give you an idea, each one of these boxes is a standard that isn't being met by Greenfields, and look at how many there are. This is outrageous. Now, it goes on to give us a little bit more information about the school here. There are 176 current pupils in the school, of which 30 are boarding. So most students are day pupils, which means they come in the morning and go in the afternoon. But there are some that stay there overnight. And then there's all the information here about the school. It says here, Greenfields is a co-educational independent day and boarding school. It's a charitable trust administered by a board of trustees. Early years pupils are taught in a separate building adjacent to the school's woodland area. English is an additional language for 67 pupils. So when it said earlier that they're not taking into consideration English as an additional language when planning lessons, 67 pupils out of 176. So a third of the students aren't being considered when the lessons are being planned by the teachers. And the ISI here go to admit the school's approaches to education are based on the principles of the independent learning promoted by L. Ron Hubbard. It states its aims are to provide an education that prepares its students for life, where study seems desirable and the world of knowledge is open to them, and to provide the knowledge, skills, rationality, cultural level, and character that fits them for their life ahead. Now, that's the end of the report. This here is just telling you about when the inspection took place, 19th till the 21st of March 2024, what exactly they observed. This is pretty standard stuff. I've put a link to this document in the description of this video if you want to go through and read it for yourself. But it is majorly concerning that the ISI have flagged in a formal way that the safeguarding procedures and policies are not being met at Greenfields. Now, this inspection took place in March. I'd like to remind everybody that in January, I attended a council meeting at the East Grinstead Town Council to raise my concerns about safeguarding at St. Hill. And I asked the mayor, what are you doing to ensure the safeguarding of children and vulnerable adults at St. Hill? Now, Greenfields is a separate organisation. It's not actually under the remit of the East Grinstead Town Council because it's in East Sussex rather than West Sussex. However, children going to Greenfields, many of them may and do live in East Grinstead. So Greenfields is a school they go to, and therefore East Grinstead comes into play. And the fact that I raised concerns in January about safeguarding, and then in March, safeguarding comes up as a major concern in this ISI report, for me, is interesting. The mayor told me that it's nothing to do with them. East Grinstead Town Council is not, interested in safeguarding. Please take your concerns elsewhere. And I wasn't directed to raise my concerns with the Independent Schools Inspectorate. I didn't know that that's the authority I should flag safeguarding concerns with about children at Greenfields. I wasn't given the opportunity to even mention Greenfields because I was told to shut up and stop talking about my concerns on social media. This is why I've been pushing so hard for East Grinstead Town Council and other public officials to listen to our concerns as ex-Scientologists. Scientology has quite a big foothold in Sussex, both West and East Sussex, and this is why I've been pushing for a meeting with East Grinstead Town Council. I've been asking to sit down with them for an hour or two and go through all of these sorts of things so that they are aware of what's going on and they can then take the required actions to ensure people are safeguarded. But East Grinstead Town Council don't care and they don't want to do that. They haven't even apologized for their behavior. So that is the document. I've published it. I've put the link to where it was published down below. I'm also going to be writing an article on this on Scientology Business, which is my blog where I talk about Scientology's UK activities. So keep an eye out for that. The article will be coming soon. Let's look at some of these questions I've had come up through this video. Rewrite. What I don't get is how do they even have enough UK kids to support a whole school? Well, that's the thing. It's a private school. It is funded by the parents paying for their kids to go to this school. And a lot of the students are international students. So they don't clearly have enough UK kids to support the whole school. But nonetheless, their fees are extortionate. And as such, they have the money to run the school. Tumble Drylo, how much are these parents shelling out so their kids can get a worse education than they can get in a public school? Well, that's an excellent question. And I was looking at their website earlier today. Greenfields fees here. This is the Greenfields website. This is a PDF document that you can get freely accessible here. Now, this is the termly fees. Remember, there are 3 or 4, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 terms in the school year, but the fees go up as you get older. So secondary school, you're talking between £4,000 and £5,000 a term for your kid to go to this school. You know, reception and year 1 to year 6 primary school is only £2,000, £2,600 a term. But as you get older, the expenses go up. And if you are in sixth form, you're talking £15,000 a year. It's not cheap. Of course, it's not the most expensive private school in the world. Eton and Harrow are a lot more expensive than this. But you raise a good point here, right? They're getting a worse education and they are going to a school where there are safeguarding concerns and paying for the privilege. Champagne in hand, in your opinion, to what degree does the belief that children are actually just small adults play into the state of things there? Do they have non-Scientologist students? That is a fantastic question. Oh, and before I get onto that, Tumbledry is saying here, and boarding is probably extra. Yes, boarding is an additional £4,950 a term for 7 nights, or £4,190 a term for 5 nights weekdays. So yes, boarding is on top of those tuition fees. As for adults in small bodies, yes, this is the Scientology belief. And the way that Greenfields teaches its students is that you can study the subjects you're interested in. And if you're not interested in something, you can drop the subject because you are a spiritual being with more power, ability, and control than you could possibly imagine. You're just in a small body. So students are kind of taught that they're in charge of their own education to some extent. And so that definitely comes into play at Greenfields. In terms of whether they have non-Scientology students, my understanding is yes. You don't have to be a Scientologist to go to Greenfields. And as far as I'm aware, they try and keep Scientology separate from Greenfields in terms of they don't preach Scientology life improvement courses or preach L. Ron Hubbard to them in the same way you would get in a Scientology org. However, they apply study technology, they apply ethics, so they don't force you to do auditing, but they will use Scientology techniques on you, and you will have to stand up and clap to L. Ron Hubbard at the beginning and the end of the day. So you have to have a respect for L. Ron Hubbard, even if you're not a Scientologist yourself. Matthew the King, does Greenfields receive any government funding? Excellent question. I don't believe so. It's a private school and therefore it is privately funded, but that is something I will investigate and get back to you on. I'd be surprised if it does, but I will find out and let you know. Dr. X is in the house. How's it going? Hello all. So a family is paying approximately £20,000 for tuition annually and not including boarding and other fees for substandard schooling. That's exactly it. 100%. You are correct. Dr. X also says, how does the school far compared to other schools in terms of A levels? In terms of grades or in terms of funding? In terms of grades, the last report that I did a video on about a year ago showed that the grades were below average because the expectation is that the majority of students will go on and have careers within the Church of Scientology rather than careers out in the real world. The last report that I did a video on did explain that there are career options and people do go on and get jobs outside of Scientology. But the focus on academic achievement was not especially great at Greenfields, as per the previous report and inspection by the ISI. Melanie Johnson here, sounds like a lot of wasted money. And I think that is absolutely very well put. I couldn't put it better myself. What we have here is a school in Sussex that the Independent Schools Inspectorate are concerned about. This school are not implementing safeguarding and other policies and procedures in the way that they should. And there are concerns that have been flagged about this school. However, it is still operating. It continues to operate based on the funding of Scientology families that are putting their kids through this school. And there's no checks and balances in place to ensure that these safeguarding recommendations are fulfilled or taking place. My understanding is that ISI will inspect again. I don't know when that will be, how long they have to review this to make sure they actually get these things in place. But for me, it seems really serious when a school has safeguarding concerns raised by the inspector. What's the next steps? And I want to know. So I'm going to do some more digging and see what more I can find out. I'm also going to approach various people for comment and see what they have to say for themselves. And of course, see what is being done to ensure that these kids are being safeguarded after the fact that these concerns have been raised. There's also something that landed in my inbox just before I went live that I need to verify before I can share with you. But if it is true, and if I can verify it from a third party or another person, it looks like the picture for Greenfields isn't very bright, and I can't wait to share more with you when I can. But that's it from me. Enjoy the rest of the sunshine of the rest of this day. I do have another video coming up later today. I'll keep you guys in the loop. Take a read of the document in the description yourselves. Pick it apart and let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you want to support the channel, you can always buy me a coffee with the link down below. You can also like, share, subscribe, comment, all that sort of stuff. It helps push this video out to more people. This school is a concern. There are children at this school. Safeguarding is not being implemented, and I want to make sure that we are doing everything we can as a community online to make sure the world knows about this and action is taking place to make sure these kids are safe. That's it from me, guys. I'll see you later.